Welcome back to another Prep Baseball Illinois podcast. Today we are going to be discussing the 2025 player rankings that we just updated yesterday. We've got Drew Locascio, our scouting supervisor, Peter Hammett, our assistant director, Diego Solares, he's the central media region director, and he also does scouting in Southern Illinois for us. And then we have Tyler Defaball, who covers Chicago area, and he'll be up at the Rock all summer and high school games throughout this spring. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Drew and have him kind of talk through how we go about the rankings and, kind of our process behind it.
Thanks, Gavin. Yeah, we just got through updating our 2025 rankings the other day. And, with that, there are a ton of guys to sift through. We ran a bunch of events in the winter, a ton of our preseason IDs throughout the state. We cap it off with our preseason all-state upper class with some of the top 2025s in the state. And, that event was big. It was over 140 players. So there's a ton of new information that we gather in the winter. And that we take into account, players that we've seen play in the past that have made big jumps with their tools versus players we've never seen. And maybe we've just gotten some heads up from people that we trust on, hey, this guy's really good, you need to see him. Or maybe we've never heard of a guy that comes out to a preseason ID event and shows well. One example would just be our first event of the winter at the Southwest Chicago preseason ID over there. Basically out in like the Shorewood area. Jacob Gross, just a big physical third baseman, showed up and swung the bat really well and got on our radar there. He's from LaSalle, Peru, 2025. And he was a guy that I was looking at and trying to slot in the rankings. And, he's a hard one. And I think it leads to a bigger question about how do we do the rankings, what all goes into it. And there's a ton of dynamics, and he's an example to maybe start off with because he pops up in the winter. I've never seen Jacob Gross play in a game, along with, a lot of these players that just showed up this winter. They're getting to that age where they're a junior, going into their junior season. So most of those guys have never played varsity ball. And we go out in the spring, and that's what we're watching is varsity games. So this age group right here, these 2025s, these going to be juniors or these guys that are juniors getting ready for their junior season, that's one of the biggest years. That's where a lot of players come out of the woodworks. A lot of players also physically mature around that time. So I would say in general, that's when the rankings tend to get shifted the most. And this rankings update was nothing new. Like there were a lot of guys we had to move around. There were a lot of guys we had to insert into the rankings for the first time. But all we got our information on this winter was showcases. We did not see these guys playing games, and we know that. And there are guys that are just showcase guys, maybe take a great round of BP, but, you go watch them in a game and they don't like the breaking ball and they can't control the zone or whatever it may be at the plate. And I think that's a big part of what we try to do and what's important to us is matching. Yeah, a kid comes to a showcase and we get to see, how the swing works, how the frame looks, all of his measurables, athletic testing, all this stuff. And we get an idea of him. From a measurable standpoint, the fluidity, bat speed of the swing, all that kind of stuff. But then we match it with going out and trying to watch them in the spring. Because that's what's really going to paint the picture on the person or the player as a prospect. It's going to give us the full look. We're going to have all those measurables from the event, which is huge. What do they run? How are, what is their peak velocity on the infield? But then how do they play the game? How easy do they make it look out there? What kind of energy do they play with? What kind of IQ do they play with? There are a number of different things that go into that. The other thing that happens when we do this rankings is the rankings get expanded. And we went from 175 and we only expanded it 25 spots to 200. But with players making jumps, with new players coming into the fold that we never have seen before, players naturally move down our list. So a player that was maybe 55th in the previous ranking, we may not have seen him. Our evaluation on that player, our grade on that player has not changed. It stayed the same. But because maybe we saw 10 other players that we had never seen before and they graded out at a higher level than this player that was at 55th. They weren't going above him, which naturally will push him down the list. But in our minds, he has not been devalued. He is still the same player. We think just as highly of him. And that can be hard for me personally, like just helping set these rankings with our staff. And then for the player, they see their name constantly, moving down the list, thinking they're doing something wrong. And in reality, they've done nothing wrong. All that they've done is enter a larger pool of players. And in doing so, naturally, there's going to be some that are better than you. There's going to be some that are pretty equivalent to you. There's going to be some that are worse than you. And it does, dictate some of the shifting that happens in the rankings. So that's something that I just want to throw out there because I think it's a little bit of a misunderstanding. These players think that they're moving down when technically they're the same guy. There is so much that goes into rankings. I'm just looking at the notes that we kind of, wrote here and what we're looking for. I think coming out of a showcase season like the winter and ranking these guys, we are very careful with not ranking guys, shoving guys too high up on the list just from a showcase. Like in-game looks to us is huge. And it impacts our confidence level. If we just see a guy at an event, our confidence is a little lighter than say if we've seen a guy take, 100 game at bats. Our confidence on that player is going to be a lot higher. And that definitely plays into the rankings. There's a lot of players that are now guys that, hey, if you had to win a game 7, who are you handing to the ball? Who are you handing the ball to right now? But maybe 4 years down the road, they're still going to be that same guy versus, guys that maybe aren't now guys per se, but we think, man, down the road when they get to 21, 22, 23, 24, they are going to be some of the, we'll look back and say, man, that was one of the best players to come out of Illinois. And maybe right now he's not fully as polished as some of these other guys, but you look at the body type, you look at the way the body moves, you look at the swing, you look at the effort level, you can dream on what that frame is going to fill out and be, and those tools are going to get to, and that 100% plays in our rankings. It's not a, hey, who's the best player now, and let's slot them in the rankings. We are doing a now, a floor versus ceiling on every single player, and everybody's, variety on their floor versus ceiling is different. Some of the guys at the top of our rankings are, maybe if you wanted to talk about like now guys, they'd be much lower on the list. But if you want to talk about the ceiling, they are as good as it gets. So I know I rambled there and I kind of jumped around a little bit, but the rankings is the hardest thing that we do. In my opinion, it's the hardest part of our job is putting a number on these guys. And the last thing that I would want a player to do is, let our ranking that we put on them, formulate how they feel about themselves as a player. They should never let, what number we put on them dictate how they feel about themselves. If anything, I hope they all use it as motivation to want to prove us wrong. That to me is like the only way to look at the ranking is, hey, I think I'm, better than this. I'm going to show PBR wrong. Not, oh man, I guess I'm not very good because I'm not ranked or I'm, ranked really low. Like we miss on guys all the time. Now we take a ton of pride in what we do and we dig through a ton of stuff and we go and see as many players as possible, but we're not perfect. And there are players that are drafted every year. There are players that, we maybe didn't rank and they go into college and they get drafted. And I look back and I'm like, man, I missed on that guy. So it is a delicate subject. It is a very difficult subject, and it is something that we do not take lightly. And we try to do the best job that we can. I don't know if anybody else on this call has something they want to color in there because I did jump around a lot, but those are just a couple things that I feel like are needed to say.
Cool. Thank you, Drew. I think that's going to be super helpful for people just to kind of dig through and kind of realize how we go about the rankings, throughout the year. So now we're going to kind of go through and break down each, the top 10 players, not every single one, but just some of the guys in the top 10. And then we're going to look at some of the guys in the that are outside of the top 10 and just kind of talk through them and what we've seen so far this year. So let's get into the top 10. I mean, the first guy that we're going to probably mention here is, number 1, Jack Bauer. We saw him at the Prep Baseball American game at American Family Field back in September. So what do you guys have on him?
Yeah, I can lead off here, just kind of talking through the top 10. A lot of the noteworthy names in the top 10 that are making moves are arms. Some of them we mentioned the other day on our IHSA podcast, but Jack Bauer, you mentioned it. He's the number 1 player in the state. He's been up there for a while now. He is a guy that is ranked where he is because of the ceiling. He still has things to polish up on the mound. As far as just handling the game and being consistent and repeating from pitch to pitch, inning to inning, outing to outing. That is something that will be huge for him to reach his sky high ceiling, because I think his ceiling is as high as it gets in the class. That's why he is where he is. It's a loose, easy mover. And he was up to 95 at that All-American game you were talking about, Gavin, and worked a clean inning. We saw him early this spring, and it was not his best look, but he was still 91, 93, showing an upper 70s slider. And he is a guy that we are betting on to get to where we think he can get to. I mean, the sheer arm talent alone is one of the best I've seen come through Illinois in a while. You're talking about a junior, touching 95 with big-time spin on the breaking ball. And then you move down the list, and you got Cameron Appenzeller, who's knocking on his heels. Cameron's at number 3 now in the state. He keeps, steadily rising up the board, and he's kind of cut out of the same cloth as a Jack Bauer. It's a little different higher slot. It works a little different, but it's easy and it's long, loose levers with all kinds of projection. He's not ranked where he is because of the now factor. It is a ton of ceiling for him too. He's a 3-sport guy down there at Glenwood. We think the sky is the limit for him as well. And then you've got Drew Winslow, who he's a 6'6" basketball player that comes out in the spring and doesn't get to, get after it in the winter like a lot of these other guys that are doing, nothing but training, weighted balls, all their velo programs in the winter. Winslow comes out, and man, as of right now, he's kind of just pitching off of sheer talent. It's a unique slot. It's kind of down by his hip. He can manipulate the baseball in a ton of different ways. And he's got Diego, I would leave this one to you, but it's a top 5 slider in the class, especially just looking off the video that you had. So
yeah. I mean, the way it plays off his fastball, the way that the 6'6" levers throw from your hip, the sweep he gets on it. He faced a good team last week and was getting some pretty ugly swings and misses out of the strike zone, just because it's such a hard pitch to pick up. It stays on that fastball plane and then falls off a cliff, and he throws it hard too. It's one of the more unique arms I've seen since I've been doing this, the way that everything works.
And right behind him, Winslow's down at Triad. And then you've got Austin Muzo next door over at Mascuda. He is the now. He's got one of the higher floors, I would say, in the class, and he has ceiling. So looking at Muzo, I mean, who would you give the ball to out of that top 10? You got Joseph Taroto in the mix at number 8. I think he's very high on that list. We saw him early this spring. Pete saw him and was that guy. Bulldog on the mound, a lot of strikes, 93, early, held low 90s, big time slider. Also a two-way guy, so we think there's more in there. We like him as a position guy. He's got big tools. But yeah, Muzo is that now guy, Diego. You've seen him twice already this spring, so I would let you dig on just a little bit more there with like the polish, the now, and how we look at guys.
Yeah, it's real polish. He'll throw his fastball anywhere in the strike zone at any count. Up to 93. Will pitch anywhere in the upper 80s to the low 90s. 6'2", 195. Was a future gamer last year and was excellent at that event. Committed to Kansas shortly afterwards. Spins 2 different breaking balls. One of them's kind of more your Zach Greinke, big depth, high 60s, low 70s curveball. And then when he wants to get a swing and miss, he'll turn to a harder, tighter, more laterally spun mid to upper 70 slider. Have seen him throw changeup to left-handed hitters. It's flashed really good in warm-ups, but when you're in upper 80s to low 90s high school arm, you're not going to be throwing a changeup as often. But to see it be there, honestly, really completes an all-around super polished profile for a high schooler. I would agree he is more of a now guy right now, but there's still some room to go in the body. I think there's still some adjustments that could be made to the fastball to improve it overall. He's going to keep throwing harder, in my opinion. By the time he's 20 or 21, I wouldn't be shocked if he's 92, 94. So it is kind of that high floor with a ceiling to it. And I couldn't emphasize the fact more that he's on a very, very short list of arms in the state that if I have to win a game, if it's a sectional championship, if it's the state semifinal at 3A, Austin Musso is definitely one of the few names I would want on the mound for me.
And also high character, just really good kid, good dude from what we've gathered so far. We had him at the Future Games, and I know you've gotten to know him down there in Southern Illinois. And character and work ethic and motor and drive and confidence, and there's a number of different attributes that play into what we look for out of prospects, but then also what will allow a player to reach his ceiling. A lot of that stuff dictates who will truly get to where you can dream on a guy. It comes down to that inner motivation and what makes a guy tick, and everybody's different, and trying to dig in there and find it and look at mannerisms on the mound, on the field, just how a guy carries himself, how a guy handles failure, how a guy handles success. I mean, all of it is stuff that we look at, we're watching, and it's not just all about, hey, how hard do you throw or how fast do you run. It's baseball players, athletes, and guys that have tools, all of it. And if you can combine that into one package, that's what you're looking for. The most athletic, best baseball players with the highest end tools, and that makes the best prospects.
I think baseball, like any other sport, is won often in the mind and mentally. More so like when if you're a pitcher, you're not going to have your best stuff every time you take the mound. Oftentimes, you're going to have your B, your C stuff, and it's how you can kind of pitch through that and get after it and still get guys out and overcome adversity. For hitters, right, like the best hitters in baseball, they hit 300. So that means 7 of the 10 times they get out. So kind of how you handle that. And more so as I've been doing this, as I've grown, as talking to Drew, talking to our staff, like the makeup to me factors more and more and kind of holds a bigger piece of the pie when we evaluate guys, because like Drew said, it really allows you to reach who you are. It says a lot about you as a person. It says a lot about you from a work ethic perspective. Like when you see high school kids that are 16, 17 years old walking around with 10% body fat and they're shredded, like that doesn't happen. You don't just wake up one day and have a super physical, muscled up frame. It takes hours and hours and hours in the weight room and eating and taking care of your body. And that says a lot about who a person is and their determination and how dialed in they are to their craft. So all of that stuff, honestly, to me, matters just as much as what you are on the baseball field, because without high character, high makeup, you're really just limiting yourself to who you're going to be as a baseball player.
And I would say you kind of touched on a point there that I think is really important. And one reason that getting in front of us at an early age is huge is tracking the progress or the ascension or descension as you move through high school. Like there are guys that come in as 8th graders and you look at the frame and it's they still have the baby fat on them, whatever it may be, and then they come back year after year after year, an event a year, and from that 8th grade year to then seeing the transition of a frame for a guy that's a junior or a senior. Yeah, some of it happens naturally with just hitting maturity and going through puberty and all that stuff. But a guy that just, to me, sticks out is a Cal Sefcik. If you go back and look at his picture as an eighth grader, freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, senior year, he put the work in. I mean, he got to be one of the strongest, most athletic kids in the class, and his stock skyrocketed because of it. And he went to Indiana. He's at Indiana right now. He's a freshman over there. But he was also, earned his way to being a pro case guy, a Super 60 guy. His batted ball metrics were the best in the class, and that was, to me, out of sheer will. Like, he did it, and that's what you love to see. You love to see guys with that kind of makeup, and then you watch him play, and he's an ultra competitive kid, and it just makes a ton of sense. Couple arms here to note, and I'll let Hammett take the reins. But Lucas Grant and Joe Olson, two left-handed arms that are kind of climbing up our list that have shown well early on this spring. Lucas Grant showed well this winter. We had seen Joe Olson. He's been a freshman. He's been a starter at St. Lawrence since his freshman year, and I know Hammett, you were out there early on to check out his start as well. So
Yeah, I'll start with Grant. He is someone that kind of popped for us at the state games, like going back a bit, and I think he was just pitching, mid 80s, but it was really dynamic, a lot of movement, the fastball, good off speed, both breaking ball and changeup, good feel to pitch. And then he came out at preseason All-State, and I think he was popping 90 there. And then that's one of those things where you're like, okay, we saw him good in game at mid 80s. Now he's popping 90. Is this going to translate to a game? And it did. He was the exact same guy, and that's why he rose so much. That's why it's so important to go see these guys and make sure it translates to games, because bullpen only tells part of the story. A lot of times you're a completely different pitcher. Like for me, my bullpen velo was a good 4 miles an hour lower than my in-game velo because I was a big adrenaline guy. So there's just a lot of different things that go into it. In-game is obviously what matters the most. And no, I think Lucas Grant is, obviously trending in the right direction, but that kid has a real chance to, I don't know, to me, potentially get some pro interest down the road. There's a lot left in that tank. Pretty projectable body. I'm trying to think of the right way to say it. Like, there's a lot more in there. It's pretty untapped, long legs, a lot more room to grow in there. And then, like I said, the pitchability is mature for his age, and he's popping 90 with that much run. He's going to give a lot of hitters problems for sure. Then moving on to Joe Olson, he actually squared off against Jack Bauer when I saw them. So that was a big game in its own right. I think number 7, St. Lawrence, taking on number 11, Linkaway East. So Power 25 matchup. It was, I believe, St. Lawrence's first game of the year. So opening day guy, adrenaline was probably running through the roof. And there was about, I don't know, between 30 and 40 pro guys there to see Tyler Bell, and they were checking out Bauer too. So pitching with that type of pressure and the way to handle himself the way he did was really impressive to me. He stood out first. Like, I went down the line to watch him warm up a little bit, and he initially stood out with his physical stature. Like, that's a guy that is putting in the work. He was noticeably stronger. It's a good frame. There's still room to add on more. But in the game, he's always been that kind of bulldog, like right at you, here it is, come and hit it type of guy. And last year, I saw him, it was a cold day at Kerrywood, so in the city. He was maybe 87, but 3 pitches for strikes, just attacking. I really liked it, but he came out earlier this year and was 88, 89, like hardly dipped below it, 90, 91 a lot, like into the 3rd inning. And he really didn't need much else. He showed a slider at 77, and he showed a changeup at 82, but it was mostly, here it is, try and hit it fastballs, and he was dominant. He finished with, it was 3.2 innings, just 1 hit and 6 strikeouts. So that's a guy that, we were already high on to start, and he just keeps proving time and time again that he's an in-game guy.
Two other arms moving down the list that are located down in central or southern Illinois that I would want Diego to touch on. I know he's the master down there. He's the guru. He's seen both of these guys so far this spring. And the first guy's Connor Blue. We've touched on him a little bit. The second guy's Tommy Kramkowski. I don't know if we've mentioned him at all, and he definitely deserves some love from what you saw the other day, Diego. So why don't you go ahead and give us a little rundown?
Yeah, I'll start with Connor Blue, a name we've been familiar for a couple, probably the last 18 months. He was really good at O'Fallon as a sophomore, one of their top arms on a team that is always one of the better teams down here. Comes to one of our events this winter, was up to 92. See him against Brother Rice in game, first start of the year. Essentially 89-91 the entire game. Hit 91 twice in the first inning. Gotten stronger, moving better. The separator for him that kind of makes him unique is the spin. I will match it up against any breaking ball in the entire state of Illinois. It is a true wipeout swing and miss pitch. He will throw it to any hitter in any count whenever he wants. He kind of is really good at manipulating it. It's the same breaking ball, it's the same grip, but he'll throw it kind of at a lower velocity band when he wants to get it over for strikes. And then when he's trying to put you away, get a swing and miss, it's 77, 78 to the glove slide, low and away, falls off a cliff. Strike thrower with the fastball. Threw well against a good Brother Rice team, 1 run in 3 1/3 before he reached his pitch count. And then just this past weekend, struck out 12 guys against Kennett, Missouri, which is one of our higher-ranked small school teams in Missouri. So that's a frontline guy in every sense of the word. The next time he takes the mound in state, they're out of state right now on their spring break trip, will be against Edwardsville in a huge conference matchup. So looking forward to that. But Tommy Kramkowski over at Belleville East, another one of those high schools down here that has produced several arms over the years. Most recently, Xander Meath, who got paid $2 million by the Pittsburgh Pirates last year in the draft. We had Tommy at 75th overall in this before we updated these rankings. He's now at 25. So that's a 50-spot jump. Came to the state games last year. He was 83-85 with really good spin. Loved every second of it. Comes to our Southern Illinois preseason ID this winter. He's 88-89, same guy, spinning 2 really good breaking balls, showing feel for a changeup. Oftentimes when you see guys in the winter, they're coming off their velocity programs. They're fresh right off the conveyor belt of their training. That's when you're going to see them throw their hardest. That was not the case for Tommy because I saw him last week against Muscuda. It's probably 40 degrees outside. Austin Musso on the mound for the Indians, and he comes out in the first inning, hits 91, was basically 87-90 the rest of the game. Extreme feel for his slider. It's another swing and miss pitch, falls off a cliff, stays on that fastball plane. He'll spin a low 70s breaking ball for a strike as more of a get-me-over. And then to left-handed hitters, he was showing a changeup too with natural fade and feel for it. So 4 pitches, strikes with a quick arm, young look, 6'3", body, plenty of room to fill out. He probably weighs 175 pounds right now. Still looks like he's 14 and 15. I'd be surprised if he's ever shaved before. So that's a big-time arm, still uncommitted. Should be the ace of that Belleville East staff. I'm sure he's going to get plenty of attention throughout the spring and summer. But the armada of arms does not end down here. Every time I go see a game, there's a different arm that pops up. So
it's awesome. Yeah, Southern Illinois is a hotbed right now, and maybe always, but right now for sure. So another arm that made some waves this winter, and he's up in the Chicagoland area, is Lincoln Cosero out of Hersey. Right-handed arm. He was on the short list for the future games last year. Saw him a couple times in the summer. Up and down. He would flash really, really interesting stuff. Just was a little inconsistent. Didn't get the call for the future games. So I'm sure that was, hopefully a motivator for him. And he clearly put in a lot of work this winter because he came out at the preseason All-State and was one of the firmest arms of the day. Also one of the better movers of the day. He's long been a really good mover down the mound. It's really, really fluid delivery, lively arm. Every pitch was basically, every fastball was basically 91, 92 in that pen, showing a decent slider and a changeup and starter profile. The biggest thing for us right now with Lincoln is because looking at where we slotted him here, he jumped 30 spots. He's a top 25 prospect in the class right now. I think it's warranted off of sheer arm talent alone. But we've got to see what kind of competitor he is on the mound. We've got to see how he handles this newfound velocity in the spring, and how he pitches. He's at Hershey, which has a bunch of good arms right now. So just getting quality innings over there is not, probably the easiest task. But if he comes out this spring and he's showing that same 91, 92 and in the zone and also holding the velo, because, one thing last summer is I would see him flash an 87, and then a runner would get on, 3 batters later, it'd be more like 82, 84. So can he pitch at 90, 91, 92 in the zone, showing control, and then can he hold the stuff for long periods of time? And how does he compete? And if he does, he is going to be a high-end prospect in this class. So he is certainly on the right trajectory, and one we're excited about, and one we are definitely going to go out there and see. He's a Xavier commit. I don't know if I mentioned that. But that's one that made a big jump in this recent rankings. And another guy who made a huge climb, I'm going to track down and just see exactly. He climbed over 100 spots. Manuka, Braden Zillis. I saw him this fall a lot. As a position guy, he plays middle infield. I saw him playing second base at the PBR Fall Championship over at Grand Park. And then I saw him get on the mound, and he was like 81, 83 with a really good slider, threw a lot of strikes. He was an athletic mover on the mound. And he clearly put in some work this winter. Whatever happened to him, he's trending double thumbs up. I mean, the guy has added big tools to his entire game. Just looking at what he did at the preseason All-State this winter, he ran a 6.87 60, which was down from a 7.26 last year. He was 89 across the infield. He was 85 last year. And then he was 100-mile-an-hour exit velocity peak this year, and he was 90 last year. So, I mean, that's just as a position player. Everything ticked up. The bat speed ticked way up. He was all over the barrel in BP, but then he also did it on the mound. And, I know Pete got a look at Manuka against JCA early in the year, and also you were sitting on his BP at the All-State, so feel free to take it from here. I just wanted to set it up a little bit, but he is certainly a guy that, he needs to be followed closely because he's uncommitted, and everything is looking bright for Braden Zillis.
Yeah, like you mentioned, rose over 100 spots. He was one of the better, more interesting rounds of BP on the day. Super loose, really upside, intriguing swing. And then I went to go see Manuka and JCA for my first game of the year. I believe he was hitting 2-hole. And I mean, there had to have been a dent in the barrel, like right in the sweet spot of his barrel. Everything he hit was on a frozen rope to right field. I think he had 2 doubles and 1 line out. But I mean, really translated to the game. Love the way he moves at shortstop too. Very smooth, very natural. There was a couple pro guys there to see Nate George that were even commenting on his actions, which is, that's not something you should take lightly, especially as only a junior and someone that, you were ranked 147th in the state, and now you got pro guys saying, oh man, who's that guy? Like, that guy's actions are pretty legit. So just goes to show again, like, don't let the rankings really get in your head because, you can make jumps and then, stuff can change really quick. But yeah, on the mound, I didn't see it in person, but the video, I mean, he's a really athletic mover. Everything he does is loose. He was up to 89. He's got that really good slider. It's pretty hard. It's like about 77, upper 70s. But moves really well, creates good separation, flexible, good layback in the arm. There's, I mean, a lot of things that indicate he's going to throw harder. And I mean, he's already proven that he has gained velocity over the last year, and everything's ticked up. So I don't expect that to change anytime soon. I would expect him to keep ticking and trending in the right direction moving forward.
It's always, for me, it's always good to see guys making big jumps like that. Like, that's what it's all about. And putting himself on the radar as a must-follow guy. And he's also going to be a huge impact player for Manuka, who's in our top 25, preseason Power 25. They've got a really good squad over there. So another guy that stood out this winter that we are going to have to track down, plays for Sycamore, uncommitted left-handed bat, Davis Colley. I've never seen it in game. So going back to kind of our rankings talk, having to tread, confidence playing a role in where we slot guys. And I was confident with what I saw in BP. It was really good. It was one of the better rounds of BP I saw all winter. And he did it up at the O'Hare preseason ID. And what I loved about it was he's a physical guy, but he's got some fluidity in the swing. And he's got power in the swing, and it's a natural uphill stroke, but it is not the all or nothing, turn and burn, trying to yank everything, hitting for the max distance or the max velo. Like there was a lot of feel to hit. At least that was the vibe I was getting. And he was hammering balls up the middle, left center gap, kind of like whole field power look to him. So that is a bat where if it does play in game, that's a middle of the order type of look that you would see at the next level. So he will be one to track for Sycamore over there. And then we've got a bunch of newcomers here, Gavin, that kind of what I touched on is guys either make really big jumps over the winter and kind of warrant getting in the rankings, or they just kind of come out of the woodworks, and guys that we didn't really know before. And I think this first guy is a perfect example of that. Brandon Shannon up at McHenry High School. And he was extremely impressive to me at the McHenry preseason ID. It's a powerful, wide shoulder, athletic frame. He's listed at 6'3", 160. The 160, watching the video again, I mean, it looks every bit of like 175. And to me, it looks like it could be 6'3", 200 in a hurry. Because he's got the wide shoulders. It's a trim look, and it's long legs, like high waist. And just watching him pitch there in person, watching his bullpen, I don't want to go crazy, but it was giving me some Blake Wolter-ish vibes. I've used that comp a couple times on him now, and that is aggressive because Blake turned out to throw 100, and maybe he'll throw even harder. Apparently he had triple digits with the Royals in spring training this spring. But Brandon Shannon was 91 with big spin on the breaking ball. It comes out easy. It's a little raw, like the delivery and the way it comes out is a little raw, but as far as just arm talent and liveliness to the stuff, he is a guy that needs to be on a lot of people's radar, and we're going to get out there to see him pitch. I know we've been just checking the stat lines coming in, and he's throwing strikes, and he's throwing multiple innings, and he's striking guys out, and he's not walking a bunch of guys. And that was kind of the key to me, is looking at the walks, because with his stuff, if he's in the zone, he's a super high ceiling guy, and we're trying to figure out where that floor is right now. So that's one that I really liked, and we need to see him this spring. Michael Furmanek is a guy that we've become familiar with. He was in the 2024 class. He reclassed to the 2025s, which always makes it a little tricky as far as where to slot him. We kind of had the same deal with George Wolkow. He reclassed the other direction. He went from, what would it have been? He was supposed to be a 24, and he reclassed to a 23. And Furmanek went from a 24 to a 25. So, we slotted him in there at number 45. He is still uncommitted. It is a dynamic fastball. from a unique slot that gets all kinds of run and sink. It's probably got the most movement of any fastball in the class. I think he could probably throw 95% fastballs to a college lineup and have a lot of success. But that's one there that we like. Diego, I know you saw Gino Zagoric, Bennett. He's a guy that made monumental jumps in the stuff and velo from at least what we had seen in brief looks in the past. But yeah, what did you see down at the Kickoff Classic?
Yeah, big body, listed at 6'3", 180. I wouldn't be surprised if he was taller than that. Started against Washington, punched out 5 guys in 2 1/3. Was up to 90 early. Loved the way it came out of his hand. It's kind of a shorter draw on the backside, but really clean out the hand. Second inning, he was 86, 88 mostly, and then kind of fell off a little bit after that. Still kind of learning how to use his body, but there was some breaking ball feel. It was more of a tighter slider-like pitch that kind of didn't have that huge depth, but stayed tight and fell at the last second. Upside arm, strong kid, going to keep filling out up to 90. I could see him throwing pretty hard by the time he's 20, 21 years old. So definitely a follow there for Bennett, who has a couple of arms to know.
I was going to say, that's a great transition there to Jake Reifenberg. He's another arm at Bennett. He's a left-hander, uncommitted, along with Zagoric. Another one that made a huge jump. And I don't know if I had seen him in the past in person, but I had watched plenty of video. I always liked the way it worked, but it was low 80s, 81, 82, maybe touching a 3. Comes out at the preseason All-State and is up to 89. And it's not just a flat, fastball at 89. The fastball's got all kinds of action, which to me makes it play up. It might make it play harder to throw for a strike because it does have so much action. So that's the big thing with him right now is we need to see, okay, it looks super dynamic in a bullpen. What is it going to look like in game? But that's one that we really like. I think he we've slotted him in there at number 81. I think it's a confidence thing. If we go out and see him in game and he shoves and holds velo and shows a breaking ball and, handles himself on the mound, he should only go up from there. Mason Palermo and Chase Niemeyer are 2 catchers that are new to the list. Mason Palermo, we got to look at him twice this winter, and he's got big tools. The arm plays from behind the plate. Offensively, he's got some leverage in his right-handed swing. He was all over the barrel in multiple rounds of BP we saw, and we got to go watch him play in a game and see how he does out there for Oswego East. And Chase Niemeyer, Diego, anything on him to color in quick?
Yeah, he came to our Southern Illinois preseason ID. He goes to Marion High School. They're off to an 8-0 start, and he's been a pretty big part of it. We'll see them this weekend. But he was at one of our events this winter. I was blown away by the catcher defense, the accuracy out of the crouch. I was throwing catcher pop times, and every single time he threw the ball down, I was like, who is this kid? Really good receiver too, willing blocker, and I like the swing. Athletic, right-handed swing. He's got a chance to really elevate the baseball gap to gap as he continues to get stronger. Debuts at 104, I believe, in our rankings. Again, a perfect example of a player that we've never heard of before, came to one of our events. I put a premium on high school kids that can really catch. It's the most important position on the field for me. And you don't really see a whole lot of legitimate high-level impact defenders, and that's what I believe Chase has a chance to be. So kind of excited to follow him here throughout the rest of his high school career. Still uncommitted, too.
Perfect. And same with Palermo. So 2 catchers there in the 25 class that deserve a follow. And Gavin, if you want to touch on another arm that we saw this winter that I know will be an arm to see for us.
Yeah, Mac McGarry. He's a Nazareth kid. Kind of came to O'Hare this year and kind of popped in our radar. I think he had been into O'Hare prior last year. But, first thing that really stood out to me, 6'5", runner. Just a really athletic kid, moves well on the mound. Clean, quick arm, up to, upper 80s now. Quality spinning slider, good changeup. So he'll be a guy that we need to go out and see this spring for Naz. So he's one to watch for sure. He's uncommitted, so another good one.
And speaking of arms to see this spring, you actually got a look at one down there in Central Illinois, and Luke Gallet.
Yeah.
What did you have on him?
Yeah, so Luke's a big 6'4", 180 or 215-pound kid. Mid 80s fastball, touched 87. Needs to work on the curveball still. Kind of babies it a little bit, but once he starts throwing that harder and figuring out how to actually throw it, he'll be a good arm to know down there, and he's uncommitted too. And then Brock Fearday, I think Diego saw him. He's a St. Thomas Effingham, is that right, or St. Anthony Effingham?
Yeah, St. Anthony Effingham, always good. They were 1A last year. They're 2A now. He's their number one arm, strong kid, 6'3", 180. Kind of that wide shoulder look, still has plenty of room. Similar to how Drew said about Brandon Shannon, I wouldn't be surprised if in 2 years Brock is 6'5", 6'4", 6'5", 210. Easy athletic delivery, 83, 85, touch 86, field to spin a breaking ball, strike thrower. Threw well against a good Althoff Catholic team. So he's going to be one to follow too. Still uncommitted, strong kid that is really good right now, polished right now, but I think he is far away from what he's ultimately going to be on the mound.
Yeah, awesome. So, I mean, that's kind of taking us through all these, 25s that we've seen so far. And, I mean, there's plenty others that we've seen. But, this is great. Appreciate you guys kind of taking the time to talk through the rankings. And look forward to the next update here with the 26s coming soon.